Hello, this is Bob Gray Sr. Welcome to Ministry Moments, Lord willing, every Friday, boys and girls, at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll come to you. You can go to your favorite podcast provider and look up and log in and subscribe to Ministry Moments, YouTube, Bob Gray Sr., or you can go to solvechurchproblems.com and go to Ministry Moments and subscribe there. A lot of extras there in the Solve Church Problems. Oh, by the way, the Passion for Souls is in third printing. And also the pastor's manual, church manual, is in its third printing and it's been updated. And you ought to get it. Please, for 3 decades, I taught the Soul Winning Clinic in Longview, Texas, and the Soul Winning Clinic. And what a blessed time we had, and so on. But you ought to get this updated. And the Passion for Souls is the kind of thing, would you want to get it and maybe teach a Wednesday night series on soul winning and buy the book, $15 a book if you get it by the case, free shipping, by the way. And the church pastor's manual is the same thing, $15 a book if you get it by the case. Please do so. These books go so fast. And honestly, it'd be a big help. 29 years every Sunday, Lord allowed me not only to win somebody to Christ that week, but to have somebody, a convert down the aisle and baptized. And so please take advantage of that. And it'll be a blessing. But Passion for Souls is third printing. And Pastor's Church Manual is in its third printing. And a guy in Pennsylvania said to me, he said, man, he said, that pastor's manual, I love that pastor's manual. He said, I read that before I read my Bible. And I said, man, don't talk to me like that. But every conceivable thing that you'd ever face in the ministry, honestly, you'll find some help there and some guidelines there and so on. Well, today I want to talk to you about standards. Standards. Everybody has standards. And to use the term legalist or legalism along with standards is ridiculous. The public school has standards. You show up naked tomorrow morning, they're going to lock you up in a mental institution. They're in the schools, they're going back to making sure that people dress up when they go to school. They found that it does affect the learning. And so anyway, everybody has standards. There's a speed limit out here outside on Henley Drive out here. There's a speed limit there, speed limit on the highways, and then they change it all the time. But it's always quality and quantity. It's interesting. If you have quality, you'll end up with quantity. If you have quantity, you'll end up with quality. It's both are necessary. And both are a part of the work of God. It's a part of society. Go ahead and see what happens when there's a breakdown. Defund the police. Well, that was a brilliant idea. And then mutilating these young people, having surgeries to males and the females. You can't change the Y chromosome. And so somewhere in here, boy, we're so stupid, just ignorant. But if without a measurement, without standards, you don't have anything. So you want quality, and you want quantity, and quantity produces quality, and quality produces quantity. So let's talk about standards, if I may. And again, let me say, everybody has standards. Now, if your pastor and the leadership of your church has set standards at a certain level or whatever they are, then thank God for it. Now, let me say, here, if the standards are this high, and people keep bumping into it all the time, there's going to be friction. Thank God if the pastor's standards or the church's or leadership standards way up here, and they jump 10 feet and the people jump 5. Well, you've got room to grow, don't you? But when you're constantly, I want strong standards. I remember, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyway. I remember a man. My wife and I went to preach at this church. My wife went with me, and he made the statement at lunch. He said, "You can't join this church if you own a TV." We got back to the motel room. My wife said, "I'd never join this church." She loved Barney Fife. She knew that character inside and out. I remember one time she said, "No, that bullet's in the wrong pocket." I told her, I said, "I wish you knew your Bible as much as you knew about Barney." But anyway, everybody has standards. But you joined that church did not join you. You chose that church did not choose you. So in your decision making, that's why the only kind of church you'll find in the Bible is an independent, indigenous church. There's no such thing as an invisible church or an invisible bride or no way. My wife was visible when I married her. I was visible when she married me, and I have become more visible through the years. My dear wife and I married 58 years before she went to heaven. What a blessing she was. But there were certain standards that she had in our home that others did not have. And her kids many times didn't understand it. My wife didn't feel like you should play ball on Sunday. That's the Lord's day. Now, not everybody held that, but my mama did, and my wife did. You say, did you agree with it? No, I didn't agree with it, but we kept harmony in the family, and so every family's got the different standards, different. Every church is different, and so on and so forth. You just always remember you joined them. So quit your griping, quit your complaining, and thank God for it. Now, if they become moved to the right even more through the years, well, that's fine. You still chose that church. And if their standards are a lot higher than yours, then thank God for it. I just don't, I remember, I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, I just thought of an illustration. Now, we're talking about standards. All right, let me give you the point. 65 points, 35 subpoints, 3 jokes, and 2 tear-jerking illustrations. Are you ready, boys and girls? Talking about standards. Number 1, standards are higher for leaders. Standards are higher for leaders. If you look at the Levitical tribe, Moses was under the shadow of the Almighty, Psalm 91. The standard, the north, the south, the east, and the west, the banners and the standards, the leader wasn't even supposed to be even close to the edge, not even close to the edge. So it's very clear that God wants the leaders to have their standards to be higher. I call that Levitical separation. It's different than layman separation. If you want to be a part of the leadership, then I ask our leaders to have higher standards than the people who were members of the church. I had them do it. I wanted to jump 10 feet. The people jump 5. If I jump 5, they're going to jump 2.5. So standards are higher for leaders and should be. So I call it Levitical separation. Again, the example of Moses under the shadow of the Almighty, not even close to the boundaries. Don't even get close to the boundaries. Well, that's what Levitical separation is. The pastor ought to jump 10 feet. If people jump 5, that's fine. If they jump 10, that's even better. But those that jump higher, that's why people that we enlisted to be a part of leadership, I want to know what their home life was like. I want to know if their life privately was that which I held as pastor and so on. Again, you joined that church. That church didn't join you. You made that decision. And so now you live with it. Our standards grew. I remember, I'm going to go ahead and say, I started to say it earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and say it now. I had a terrible issue with culottes. It was terrible. They looked, it might as well have been pants. And it just kept getting like gauchos. It kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I remember preaching in a church and I was sitting there waiting and Brother Howe said, don't waste time. So, be a reader, don't waste time. Anyway, I turned around and reached the back. I thought I was grabbing a book to read, put it on, but it was a dictionary. And I got it down, laid it on the desk there at this pastor's church. And I thought, well, let's look up some words here. So I'm thumbing through it and I found the word culottes and it said baggy pants. Whoa. By the way, I'm not telling you how to dress, not at all. I'm just telling you what happened to me. Baggy pants. And I thought, good night. That's what's wrong with some of the issues that I was having. And so on. Because they would say, well, they're culottes. Yeah, really baggy pants. But anyway, I went home and on Wednesday night, I said, folks, please have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. I said, from now on, I'm just asking leadership now, not church members, but I'm asking leadership. let's do away with the culottes and let's get back to the dresses and so on, and do it that way. Anyway, you're mad at me, aren't you? You're mad at me, aren't you? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what happened to me. And so I had a deacon come in the next week and had an appointment. He come in and sat down. He said, I heard what you said. And he said, I absolutely disagree with you. In fact, he said, I'm 1,000% against it. But because you're the pastor and you feel it's safer for us to do that, I'll take care of my family. But I just want you to know, man to man, I think you're crazy. And I think this is just, I don't agree with you. And God bless him. He was a good man and never caused me any trouble then, caused trouble later on, but not then. Now, standards. Standards are higher for leaders. People come to church and they come to all kinds, and as long as they're not naked. And we had the clothing room, and we people that rode the buses that we wanted to help them wrap around skirts for the girls and so on. We tried to help dress them up, not down. So we tried to be a blessing in that area, but I didn't have dictates on it. But standards are higher for leaders. Number two, standards do not make us spiritual. Just because you are separated from the world does not mean that you're spiritual. Number three, standards keep us from the world's influence. Standards keep us from the world's influence. So if you have stand for leadership, if you're gonna, and I would have the people sign the workers, teachers, and workers requirement sheet every January, because things change. Oh, they change so fast you can't keep up with it. So I'd have them sign back up again because there's so much change. The world is just it's just infinite in the way that the world goes down so fast you can't keep up with it. Truth is finite, error is infinite. It's fluid. Just never know what's going to happen. So I'd have sign back up again every January. And I said, number one, standards are higher for leaders. That's where you want to have it for the leaders. You're going to sing on the platform, you're going to dress right, not going to be half dressed and so on. You're going to go soul winning. You don't have to sing it, you don't have to at all. But if you did, you're going to represent the ministry as it should be. Standards do not make us spiritual. Never have I ever said that it does. It doesn't. It doesn't. Number three, standards keep us from the world. Number four, holiness keeps us close to God. Holiness keeps us close to God. Holiness keeps us close to God. Number five, holiness is knocking on heaven's door, while righteousness is knocking on a sinner's door. Let me say it again. Holiness is knocking on heaven's door. I want to get to know God. I read his word because I want to get to know him. And I want to get close to God. Now, righteousness, standards keep me away from the world's influence. So I have standards. Be tough sometimes to keep them, but I'm going to keep them. But holiness keeps us close to God. And I want to be close to God. So that's the concept of holiness. Holiness is knocking on heaven's door, while righteousness is knocking on a sinner's door. We're talking about standards now. Everybody has them. They're just different degree, but everybody's got standards. I don't care. You belong to some club, some country club or something. There's standards. Everywhere you go, there's standards. In the world, Romans 13, we have the government there, and they restrict us. Those are standards to try to make sure that we are protected, and they are for our safety. Standards are meant to help us. But I said, number one, church setting, standards are higher for leaders. I called it Levitical separation versus layman separation. If you want to be a layman, fine. But if you're going to be a Levitical, if you're going to be a leader, Levitical separation then applies. You're in a different category now. Number three, standards keep us from the world's influence. Number four, holiness keeps us close to God. Number five, holiness is knocking on heaven's door, while righteousness is knocking on a sinner's door. Next, as the world becomes more wicked, we should become more holy. As the world becomes more wicked, we should become more holy. Don't keep the same distance from the world that you had 20 years ago. You stay in tune with God. You stay close to God. Let the world move. The world's going to get worse and worse. We can't stop the decay, but we can delay the decay in our own world. And the church ought to be a representative of heaven, not the world. If you use the world to reach the world, you'll end up with the world and in the world. We don't want earth's music or the world's music in order to attract the world. We've got the gospel, the Holy Ghost of God, talking about heaven and hell, winning people to Christ, and then get them to church. Church is not meant for, and I shocked one of my own family members this past week when I said it, but church is not meant for lost people. No. Bus ministry is not meant for lost people. That's why the Bible pattern, the template is win them to Christ, pick them up, bring them to church. Then they make a profession of faith. They could understand. Brother House one time, somebody asked him about a TV ministry. He said, no. He said, the world doesn't understand us. And what have they seen in thine house was a sermon he preached one time about it. And no, the world does not understand, can't understand spiritual principles. They can't understand it. They think you're nuts and you're crazy. So the best thing to do is win folks to Christ, get them to your profession of faith. If you have more people saved at the altar than you have saved out in the highways and hedges, you do not have a New Testament church in action. No, you don't. No, you don't. We're talking about standards now. Standards are higher for leaders. I call it Levitical separation. If you want to be on the staff, you can represent the pastors. This is the pastor's ministry, not yours. And he's just giving you a part of that ministry and a part of God's people to lead. So standards do not make us spiritual. Number 3, standards keep us from the world's influence. Number 4, holiness keeps us close to God. Number 5, holiness is knocking on heaven's door, while righteousness is knocking on a sinner's door. Hope you got that. Next, as the world becomes more wicked, we should be more holy. The world's going to keep moving to the left and the left and the left. Who would have thought that we'd have what with social issues we've got now? And the poor kids and these mutilation because of the worlds of trans this and trans that. I'll tell you one thing: if my granddaughters in that bathroom, and you're a man, you feel like a woman, and walk in there, you'll walk out genderless. That's for sure. Standards are higher for leaders. Levitical separation ought to be at play. Layman separation, yeah, I think so. But if you're going to lead, you got to jump 10 feet. Then number 2, standards do not make us spirit. You cut your hair, fellas, and you gals, you wear dresses and you look modest and so on. That doesn't mean you're spiritual, not at all. But it sure is a safe standard. It sure is. Number 3, standards keep us from the world's influence. Number 4, holiness keeps us close to God. Number 5, holiness is knocking on heaven's door, while righteousness is knocking on sinners' door. As the world becomes more wicked, you should become more holy. Why? Because you're staying close to God. The world's going to keep moving. It's truth is finite, error is infinite. It's backsliding. It's a slide. All right. Next, it takes discipline to have standards. If you can't say no to a movie, you're not going to stay out there for 2.5 hours working a bus route. No. If you pastors' wives, I see these pictures of pastors and their wives in the tightest blue jeans I've ever seen. I never saw them that way when I was in high school. Unbelievable what's going on. What in the world are you trying to do? Trying to say the world it's okay to be worldly and spiritual? You can be spiritual and worldly? I don't think so. All right, next. It takes discipline to have holiness. To get in the morning, spend 2 hours with God. God speak to you, you speak to him, spend time with God. That takes discipline. And then my last point is a disciple is a disciplined child of God. If you want to be a disciple, then you have to be a disciplined child of God. You have to be. And if you be disciplined in your life, I mean, your quiet time with God takes discipline. Saying no when others are saying yes takes discipline. To not run with the mob rule, the mob crowd, that takes discipline. To stand up for the man of God and the word of God, that takes discipline. When your friends turn on you and listen, I remember when Dr. Hyles, 1989, the attacks came. Oh, they were vicious. They were vicious. I, along with Dr. Tom Neal and many others, stood for Dr. Jack Hyles. We stood for the man of God. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. I went and personally visited Sumner, Evangelist Sumner, who wrote that terrible article about my pastor. I mean, it was horrible. Well, I went and saw him. He didn't have a lick of anything to call proof about anything. It was just slander. Most podcasts you're watching are nothing but slander. That's all it is. They would, if it wasn't for the slander, they wouldn't be able to go on the air. Talking about standards now, boys and girls. Standards are higher for leaders. I call it Levitical separation. Pastor gives you a part of the ministry and a part of God's people, then standards ought to be higher. Jump 10 feet, let them jump 5. Number 2, standards do not make us spiritual. No, cut your hair. You look much better with your hair cut. Get the earrings out of your ear. Somebody's going to pinch your rear end one day. But that doesn't make you spiritual. It doesn't make you spiritual at all. Number 3, standards keep us from the world's influence, though. Next, holiness keeps us close to God. Next, holiness is knocking on heaven's door while righteousness is knocking on a sinner's door. Next, as the world becomes more wicked, you should become more holy because you're getting close and closer to God. The world is sliding fast to the left. It is crazy, isn't it? No womb should be a tomb. Next, it takes discipline to have standards. Next, it takes discipline to have holiness. And let me remind you of this, and I'm through. A disciple is a disciplined child of God. If you want to be a disciple, you've got to be a disciplined child of God. Well, I hope this helped you. SolveChurchProblems.com. If you want to go there, it'll help you. It'll do you good. Ministry Moments YouTube, Bob Gray Sr. Subscribe. And as of the taping of this, we're at 497. Why in the world can't we get 500? I hope that you'll do that. And then you may not be able to watch it every Friday at 4 o'clock, but you can watch it at your leisure when you have time. But do subscribe. God bless you. Okay, this is Friday. Tomorrow's Saturday. Time to go soul winning. Win people to Christ. Pick up your guests and visitors for church on Sunday morning. Sunday school starts. That's when church starts. Sunday school. God bless you. Have a great weekend.